At the tender age of 15, Gaea was forced to give up all that she loved when faced with an unexpected diagnosis of juvenile onset illiopathic rheumatoid arthritis. As a talented runner, Gaea found herself barely even able to walk or carry out the most basic of daily tasks. But this story didn't end there. Gaea was not going to let this diagnosis define her. She desired to become a mother and live a full life. This conversation dives deep into the intersection of autoimmunity, motherhood, and natural health innovations. Gaea's honest reflections on managing her condition whilst raising 5 children will resonate with mothers juggling invisible illnesses and the unspoken struggles of chronic health. Beyond the science, Gaea's insights on emotional resilience, the spiritual side of motherhood, adaptations to the model of the normal family life, and how self-awareness can bring peace in chaos, offering a call to embrace wholeness in all its aspects of life. This episode will bring resonance to all mothers, with particular resonance on women facing autoimmunity, health warriors, and anyone curious about integrative approaches to wellness. This is part 1 of a 2-part episode. Please note the information in this episode is not medical advice. It is based on the experience of one individual. No health claims are made or guaranteed. Please seek advice from your own healthcare provider before changing any form of treatment plan. Enjoy. Today I'm joined by a beautiful mum, and we can see that she's keeping it very real with her little person in front of her. Can I get you to introduce yourself, where you're placed in the world, and who you're a mama to?
Sure. So I am Gaea Chapman, and I'm based in Moreton Bay, Queensland. So that's like nestled in between Brisbane and the sunny coast. And I'm mum to 5, 4 beautiful girls, and our first little baby boy. So
Oh,
it's very
I didn't
special.
realise that was the first boy. Yeah, gorgeous. So take us back, Gaea. It's lovely to have you on the podcast. Take
Thanks
us
for
back
having
to
me.
maybe your younger years. Who was the youthful Gaea?
So the youthful Gaea, goodness, throughout my primary years, I was into little athletics and just naturally sort of gifted with running and track and field and everything. So my parents popped me in to, see if I might want to take it a bit more seriously, so that by the time I got to high school, I was sort of making it to state level in 100 metres, a little bit of Jamaican heritage there to thank for that. So that was me. I was very vibrant, loved doing all the different sports in high school when you could move around different sports throughout the terms. That was me as a kid. Very, very active.
Yeah, right. So just really full of life. Yeah. So I understand, though, that there was something that happened in your life that really, put a halt on that and changed the trajectory of your path a little bit.
Yeah,
Can you share that with us?
100%. Yeah. So in 2002, I was in year 8. I found myself experiencing pain in my fingers, in my wrists, and I thought it was RSI. My mum and I thought it was RSI. She'd actually just had carpal tunnel surgery. So we thought, it's probably similar. I was working a lot on my laptop when laptops were, coming out and popping off for the first time. And then I started feeling it in my feet, which didn't sync up with the whole RSI thing. And I think I might have been given a course of steroids of some sort for both of them. And the doctors were a bit unsure as to what it could be, possibly some sort of inflammatory something. So he's nuzzling for some food. So from there, within a few months, it had progressed to my knees, and we ended up going to a doctor who popped me on prednisone and I think it might have been methotrexate because it was looking like some type of arthritis and it was not working. And so we kind of had a background growing up where my parents were into natural health. And because it had been emerging so quickly, we sort of initially went the medical route just to not sort of muck around. But then when it wasn't working, we found ourselves looking to like alternative sort of natural means. And so we went to Chinese medicine. And the pain abated straight away on the herbal painkillers, but what was happening was that the inflammation was progressing so much faster, not being on the sort of more harder chemical pharmaceuticals. And then, yeah, it got to a point where I was still, I think there was sort of flare-ups on and off at this point, and I found myself sort of still being able to run here and there because I had been progressing through like school to regional to state. And by the time I got to state, I don't know what possessed me, but I guess I just really wanted to push through as much as I could with what felt like my path as an athlete. And I should have really been listening to my body, but wasn't. I think that's really truly part of what got me into the situation I was in. And yeah, I went to run this 100-meter race at state level and just found myself unable to complete the race. I had to stop midway and kind of walk off track. I couldn't even walk to the end of the finish line and technically finish the race. It was very embarrassing. It was very confronting. It was very devastating. It was all the things, but I also was just really afraid of what was happening to my body. I didn't have family with me. Mum and dad were working, so I had to get the bus home and sort of discuss with my parents what was happening. And within about, I'd say a month after that, it got to the point where I hopped in the bath one afternoon to try and soothe my sore joints, and I just could not get out myself. And Mum had to lift me out, and that was terrifying for her. So yeah, that was when I ended up that evening in a wheelchair and had to go see a pediatric rheumatologist and discuss, what more drastic measures we could take. So yeah, big halt on what I thought was the trajectory for my life.
Yeah, especially at the tender age of 15, isn't it? You're really trying to understand yourself and work out your identity. So that I can imagine how destabilizing that felt for you.
Yeah.
And as you said, very terrifying, not knowing what the future held. Yeah. So what happened next? Was there, what was your diagnosis?
So my sorry, you go.
Go ahead. And can you explain that diagnosis to us? Actually?
Sure. So my diagnosis was polyarticular idiopathic juvenile onset rheumatoid arthritis. A lot of different aspects to that. So to break that down, basically polyarticular means it was affecting multiple joints. So whilst it was my knees that wasn't allowing me to walk fully, that was the most affected joint. I was walking around on red hot balloon knees, but the Chinese herbal painkillers were a little too effective at masking the pain. And it was actually because my herbalist went away for Chinese New Year and hadn't oversupplied me while she was away. So that was how I was came to the point of not being able to walk. And so, yeah, it affected every single one of my joints except my jaw. So I was able to talk, which was a blessing. I probably would have lost my mind. Yeah. So idiopathic means unknown cause. Juvenile onset, I was young when this was all happening to me, and rheumatoid was that immune factor with the rheumatoid factor and all of the different proteins in your body and how they're affected. Arthritis, so it was just affecting my joints, the synovial fluid around my joints. So, yeah, it was quite a mouthful and very scary and overwhelming. A mouthful to just even say what I had. I was trying to not feel like a total freak at my age. Sort of, you think of arthritis and you think of old people. So it was a lot.
Oh gosh, that's why I wanted you to break it down, because hearing that whole diagnosis and all those words sounds very overwhelming. Can you describe the pain? What type of pain does that emanate?
Fire, just burning, hot, stinging, stabbing, all of the worst kind of pain.
Sounds awful.
It was really hard. looking back, though, I'm surprised at my mental fortitude as a young person. And I think because of the community of support that I had around me, and a lot of the we're very much in the area of mental health at the moment in the world.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think because I had a sort of faith-based background, which is, all about hope and all, all the good things, community, love, all that kind of thing. So I think that played a massive role in me actually being pretty grounded through that period, and bizarrely positive. But I do think I might have been suppressing a lot to cope. So that kind of comes later down the line, where I realized that was what was happening a bit, which I think is very natural to the human nature as well.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and I guess at a young age it's very difficult to understand what you're feeling as well, and know that, you don't know how to feel a lot of the time, do you? And I guess all those things were wonderful for you, maybe a distraction, but it probably was much later on that you were completely cracked open and were able to feel what you were really feeling emotionally.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and I think you've brought up some good things about how faith and mindset are very important in the treatment of anything really, or just managing and coping daily life. Maybe a little bit missing in the medicine world. So what was the treatment that was offered you from your healthcare providers?
Yeah, so I had everything thrown at me in the end that was chemically possible at the time, just because it was I was deteriorating so fast. And we'd had I guess genetic to some extent, but a family member who'd had a similar diagnosis. That was, she was in Jamaica. I think she was my mum's cousin or something, and she had rheumatoid arthritis, but that sort of rheumatoid and autoimmune factor spread to multiple organs in her body, to the point where she then passed away. I think was her heart in the end. That was what failed her. So we were very concerned about that risk. You can get blindness. So they just wanted to really throw everything at it. So I ended up on prednisone, the steroid. I ended up on methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy drug. And the strongest thing that ended up being the game changer for me was something called Enbrel, or etanercept is the medical name. And that was when it was still in trial phase, a medicine that was very, very new technology. And it's called biologic drugs, where they sort of mimic systems in the body that are already there that suppress the immune system. So having an autoimmune condition is like having a very hyperactive immune system, that where the body starts attacking itself, misjudging sort of parts of the body as a threat. Yes. So I started to have these injections. I had the nurse come a few times in the night, and then she showed me how to take these injections myself, which was painful every time, but part of the process. And so that was very effective for me. And within about 6 months, I was walking again with lots of hydrotherapy and physiotherapy. So that was interesting, learning to walk again. So I'd spent about 6 months in a wheelchair, and then I was crutches and a granny walker. That was a very incredible experience. And I was very, very grateful that I had that outcome, because it was interesting, meeting up with groups of other young people, or, of varying ages, 30s, 40s, people that typically, wouldn't think had arthritis, meeting up with them and sort of hearing about their stories where they weren't offered the same treatment because they'd had it much earlier and it wasn't available yet. And because I was part of the trial, I had it heavily subsidized. And so it was very, very, very affordable, as opposed to being thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I felt very blessed, even though it was a very hard journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there was a lot of missed school. Is that right?
Yes, I ended up doing school from home.
Okay.
Their school was very accommodating. In the end, I wasn't able to complete my high school certificate because I just wasn't comfortable with the whole idea of having multiple other people being my writers on my behalf. So I tried to kind of go the back route through TAFE and doing doing a subject at a time, taking my time with it, but that then becomes very tedious and very difficult. So yeah, it definitely the whole being an athlete trajectory, that was pulled out from under me. And then I actually was very academic as well. I'd sort of gone hard in all areas, trying to do my best, and was finding a bit of my identity through the school sort of, that, you know, performing well in all areas sort of identity. And so when that then was pulled out from under me, it was very disorientating. It was just like, oh my goodness, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? And then I did find that when I went to study other pathways, like I studied assistant in nursing in case I wanted to head to the trajectory of becoming a nurse. And I found that I couldn't tuck in beds. I couldn't be on my feet all day. Like there was just, when it came to doing the practical nature of anything that I put my hand to study, I found that almost every job had this hidden element of repetition that you take for granted. So yeah, it was definitely many years into my 20s that I felt very lost and confused about, my purpose and my path.
I can imagine, And what I'm hearing, you know, it might start off as thinking it's a physical ailment, but really it just filters out into every part of our life, doesn't it? And every part of our functioning. So I know that you sort of obviously have tried many, many medications, but you also took a different journey in researching how you can help yourself with your health issues. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so having that background, having grown up in a very health conscious family, I was able to implement a lot of what I'd learned about lifestyle and the effect that has on disease in the body. So I was able to, and also learning to listen to your body as well. So through that combination of like having that understanding of different types of, you know, things that we consume in our food. So like high sugar and like making sure you're getting rest and exercise and water. Just applying that knowledge did make a difference. So I was able to steadily reduce my intake of some of the other medications like the prednisone and the methotrexate, the chemotherapy drug. So because the long-term use of those is very hard on the body. So that was really, that felt very liberating, I guess, to feel like there was some element of control that I had and not just at the mercy of my ill health and the medical system, I guess. And that sort of feels like you're piling on ill health, like when you're just sort of pumping pills. So that was really empowering. And then by chance or by destiny, however you look at it, I guess, my firstborn, she had a blood test done as all babies do, and the foot prick, you know, watching them cry, you know, to their poor little feet. But in the end, that ended up becoming a really big blessing for me. So they retested her and then tested me because something had been flagged. And it turned out that it was a deficiency in a metabolic enzyme called carnitine, which I had seen in my research as something that could assist in arthritic symptoms and autoimmune conditions because it has antioxidant properties. It's something that we naturally make in our body, but my body wasn't. And I had what they called seemingly asymptomatic carnitine deficiency, because if kids are born with it, they have very, very pronounced, noticeable negative metabolic problems and have to sort of really watch the way they eat, you know, a bit like diabetics. So because it was popping up for me later in life, they were like, well, you've clearly gotten by somehow, and we're going to call this asymptomatic, but as a precaution, you need to take carnitine because carnitine is used to convert energy from fat into energy for our muscles primarily. And so with that, they were saying there was a concern for heart failure in your older years if you sort of do have this subtle weakness to your muscles with, you know, you're not getting this energy to your muscles as readily as your average person. So I thought, well, I'm not going to muck around. I'll do what I'm told. It's harmless. It's not like I'm popping your typical pharmaceutical pill. It's something that, you know, gym goers take to burn fat more efficiently. So it was funny rocking up to like the gym section and being like, hi, do you guys have carnitine? And they're like, you look pretty slim. But yeah, it's definitely interesting being out in the world and explaining what you have to people because it looks like a bit of an invisible illness that you have. So I started supplementing with that. not really thinking much of it. You know, I'm going to see the results later in life or not see the results because I just hopefully won't have a heart attack. You know, it's a bit of this thing. You just trust the process and do what you're told. And so I started noticing that around the 6-week mark, when my rheumatologist had predicted that, you know, that's when all my symptoms would come flooding back because I had paused on all of the medication, because during pregnancy, most autoimmune conditions go into remission. So that was really lovely to enjoy. It was such a gift. Because typically pregnancy for most women is not fun.
I know. Now I'm starting to, because I had a similar thing. Now I'm starting to get why you will go falling pregnant so many times.
I feel like Superwoman.
I know.
Yeah, the first trimester is awful, like it is for everyone. But then from then on, I'm just if I can do anything. And so, so I found that 6-week mark, I started to get pain in my knuckles. It's interesting that it was almost like reliving the whole thing from when I was young. You know, it was the first place was my knuckles and my wrists, I guess, because you use your hands a lot each day, so they're getting a lot of repetitive movement. And so I noticed that over a course of a few months, I started to notice a very uncanny correlation between how much carnitine I was taking and whether I was symptomatic. And I started to test that and noticed a very clear pattern, and I thought, you're kidding me. And then I researched carnitine and was like, oh, that's right. What? I was so surprised. I just upped my dose so much that I was asymptomatic typically, but, you know, to the point where it's what it felt like on my prednisone. So what I was taking before, which wasn't perfect, like I still was symptomatic, but in my mind, I'm like, this is my new baseline. So it kind of felt like, oh, I'm healed. You know, it kind of felt like I've got a new pain management system that's so much easier in my body, and I don't need to keep going back for prescriptions to my rheumatologist. So I cancelled my rheumatologist appointment. She's like, are you sure? I did go back after the 6-month mark, and she, you know, palpated all the knuckles and all my joints and was like, wow, this should be so much worse. And she didn't really speak to the carnitine. She kind of, I mean, she'd technically lose her job if everyone started taking carnitine. So she just was like, are you sure you want to cancel, like, for the next, because I was going every 6 months at that point. She'd give me a big long script. Anyway, so that was really exciting for me. That was a huge game changer. So then I just had to faithfully stay taking these carnitine tablets, which was, I was used to, at that point, popping pills, if you will. So it still was a little bit of an inconvenience. But I thought, you know what, I'm happy with this. Like, I still would love to do a cleanse or a detox and maybe get to the root cause and banish this, you know, autoimmune condition, which you'd hear of stories of people reversing their autoimmune conditions, like on their blood results, by doing certain detoxes and cleanses. So I thought that was something I'd love to, you know, aspire to doing one day, but I also was enjoying growing a family and detoxes aren't the safest things when you're breastfeeding or pregnant. So so I kind of just sort of found that I was content on this path. Even though I'd have occasional flare-ups, I'd just try and up my dosage of carnitine and manage my lifestyle, get more sleep. So that was the path I walked for quite a while, until the next chapter.
And I think it just goes to show that sometimes we just need to do our own research as well, because you know, obviously medicine is there for a reason, and there are times where it is the solution, but there's so many other things and, you know, resources we can go to, and it just takes a little bit of, I think, courage and you know, inquisitiveness, some curiosity as to see what else there is out there. So did you find anything else on top of that would help you in a more natural, holistic way?
I had tried other things in my youth, like when I first got it, we were trying all sorts of things, like glucosamine and cucumber water, or, you know, tablets, and it was just so aggressive that nothing really made a difference until we'd had it was actually just the biologic drug that helped so much in the end. Otherwise, naturally, I don't know if because I'd become settled with the injections I was taking and then managing the rest with lifestyle, and then with the carnitine, it sort of became a similar thing. And I think there are so many things you could do, and you can get caught up in that. Trying things and it not working, and because I'd sort of was happy with where I was at, even though I was not able to like hold a job because the movement in my body, the repetition of the job became a problem. I sort of didn't really see. I just thought if that was how I was managing with injections and a cacophony of pharmaceuticals, you know, then I just don't think that that's a path for me. You know, like I just didn't. I'd sort of just come to accept that I tried my best at everything, and this was my path. Was just, I guess, to be a mum, stay home mum, and you know, it's a little bit harder to be on a sole income family, but it was a really big blessing to be home with the kids, and I didn't take that for granted. I knew that was a sacrifice that we were sort of, I felt very blessed, even though there were downsides to that. I could have definitely probably tried a lot of other things, but I didn't.
Well, you certainly have a very fulfilling role as is. I think, hardest job in the world.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that there was something else that actually blew your mind in terms of managing your symptoms as well. What was that?
So, after coasting with my carnitine and multiple other pregnancies where I'd go into a sort of remission and enjoy that, which meant I wasn't as heavily relying on carnitine during those periods. That was lovely to have solid breaks from any like niggling or stiffness or flare-ups. Sorry, that's my dog.
It's okay.
So I had a major health crisis in 2023, I think it was, where I had gone to visit a girlfriend, and we had invested in a water machine that was alkaline. And that was, I guess, where a little bit of curiosity spiked up, because I felt like I'd seen enough information around, like, arguments around the alkaline diet and inflammation. So I had tried alkaline diets in the past, but I didn't notice significant changes. But I had seen a lot of information around the water, and water is definitely way less effort to consume than like preparing different meals and the effort it takes to create new habits, especially when you're raising a family and the kids want to eat, you know, something different from you. So we had invested in an alkaline water machine, and wasn't massive, the difference, but I still trusted, I guess, in the technology and knew that it was filtering out nasties as well. So it was, to me, it felt like it was great. But then it got to a point where after maybe 3 years of drinking that water, I found that if I would forget to have my carnitine, I was okay. Like, I just started noticing, I'm curious about this, you know, is this like delayed effects of pregnancy after a child? It was very confusing to know what was at play there. Was it hormones? Because that does affect autoimmunity. And was it the water? So anyways, I just was enjoying the ride and curious, I guess, but trying not to overthink and just being grateful that I wasn't reaching for the carnitine as much. And so, I mean, I was still taking it because obviously you need to take it as a precaution for the heart stuff and all of that, but I just wasn't like taking heaps and heaps. Anyway, so I went to visit my friend in Queensland and was away from the water for about a week. I obviously had no correlation or thought in my mind about I'm away from the water. It didn't cross my mind. I'm just sort of painting the picture. I guess you can see where it's going. So I found myself in bed after having gone to sleep, and there were no telltale signs that my body was going to crash completely. And I woke up at about midnight and I couldn't move a single limb, finger. I mean, I guess I could move my jaw. So it was just very terrifying to find myself in this nightmarish kind of throwback of what had happened in my, early teens. And everything was racing through my mind. What have I done wrong? Like, I should have just been more careful with my diet and how I looked after my health. And I should have done those detoxes, and, my time's up and I blew it. And I just was so hard on myself. And I had my small child with me. So she was about maybe 6 months or 4 months. And she was waking up, fussing, wanting to nurse and have a little dream feed, and I couldn't move at all. And she and I just cried together, and I tried to sing her songs, and I just was, I couldn't wake my friend up. I didn't really want to shout across the house, and she was like, well, why didn't you wake me? And I just didn't want to disturb the family because she had children too. So come morning, she was carrying me to go to the bathroom, and lifting me into the bath, and it was just all too, it felt like all of a sudden what felt like 20 something years ago just felt like just yesterday, the way that the sort of trauma memory came back of my teen years of, you know, being so incapacitated. And she was brainstorming, going, Gaea, like, what's worked for you? Like, I know you're carnitine, and then you had your alkaline water. And she'd sort of thought about the alkaline water outside of me thinking about it, forgetting that we'd actually, at the beginning of my trip, been discussing hydrogen water, because she and I both had come across this Kangen hydrogen water and looking at the health products and the business opportunity, and I thought, oh no, it's a scam, and I'd really poo-pooed it at the beginning of our trip, so it was really really interesting what happened towards the end of the trip that really knocked me off my feet, quite literally. And so she was like, okay, I'll go buy some alkaline water and I'll go buy you some carnitine, and I dosed up on both those things, and it was wild to watch my body. Within a couple of hours, I could shuffle across the floor, and then by 24 hours, so I'd already called the airport, had a wheelchair organised for myself because I was due to fly home the next day. I had assistance ready for me, and that was a very emotional phone call, to make. And yeah, so to then rock up at the airport the next day with my baby in the baby carrier, my luggage, and then I was at the back of the plane, so I had to go on the tarmac, ascend the back steps, which is quite steep, and I just was like, this is so surreal. I'm so speechless and dumbfounded as to what has just taken place in the last 24 hours. What is my life? I was just so shocked. I felt so grateful that I was given this, I wasn't stuck where I was 20-something years ago, where I had to then look at going on heavy drugs again and, being in a wheelchair for, 6 months. I just was blown away that I was able to recover in this short period of time, and thinking, had carnitine been this powerful this whole time? Was the water more powerful than I realized? Because I just was shocked, totally shocked. So I did a lot of deep diving research into water and hydration and hydrogen water and alkaline water and carnitine. I needed to know what was the most impactful sort of support that got me through that recovery so quickly, like lightning speed. So you're
saying, just to clarify, that you were stuck and paralyzed almost in a bed, and it was a few hours later from drinking.
After taking, So I probably had
move and...
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, just a few hours. Yeah, mind-blowing. And this was chemically alkaline water, so it wasn't what we know as electrolyzed reduced water, but just that alkaline effect I hadn't really processed, because there's lots of conflicting evidence, if you will, and lots of different, experts that will say it does work or it doesn't work. The alkaline, your gut, your gut does this and that, and it sort of changes the pH of the water you consume anyway, because it needs to maintain 2 point whatever it is in the gut. So I don't like to be preachy and absolutist about my approach to health, because I know that sometimes what works for someone doesn't work for another. So I was just sort of, it seemed to me pretty innocuous to buy an alkaline water filter. I just thought there's no harm here, although some will argue there is. But yeah, it was interesting that I'd had that season where I wasn't needing as much support, as many supports in that year prior, leading up to this sort of health crises where I was away from that alkaline water. So yeah, it was very, very, very fascinating experience to go through, and a huge catalyst for me taking research to a whole other level in terms of reading really deep diving research papers for the first time, and studies that were carried out, and papers and journals, and getting back into chemistry a little bit, and going hard in the science and nerding out a
Yeah,
bit. So
yeah.
I just was like, I need to know what just happened.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is sounding like very exciting, and it's also sounding like a bigger topic. I can feel that the research you've done is going to be so fascinating, and what you've been able to find out and how you've been able to help your own health and potentially help other people as well. So I think what I'd like to do is make a part 2 of our conversation together.
Sure.
And we'll deep dive more into the research that you've done and the science behind it. So for this particular episode, let's circle back more to you becoming a mother, because as a mother of 5, we certainly can't treat that as if that's not a big thing in your life. How did you feel when you found out that you were becoming a mother?
So motherhood, for me, it wasn't something that we had planned. Our first child, we were both pretty young.
Okay.
But it was something that we went with the flow with because of our trust in our relationship and the way that we'd come to meet one another and our aligned values. So that was really special. But it wasn't without friction that, because we were young, and so there was a lot of different feelings, in the family, extended family. So there was a lot of stress in the beginning on my body and my mental health. But yeah, when I was beginning to experience the symptoms, regress, or not regress, sorry, go into sort of a remission, that was an unexpected blessing, that came from a situation that was mixed, in terms of causing stress in the family and then the awful first trimester.
Yeah.
So to experience this sort of body at a time where you're told, pregnancy is really hard, I sort of experienced quite the opposite and had a lot of strength come back and a lot of flexibility and mobility. So that was a really beautiful surprise. And then, of course, going into my birth, and then her having this blood test and then finding out about the carnitine, that was another blessing. And so she just was such a treasure of a child, and a real joy. Her middle name's Joy, so a real joy to raise. And even to this day, she's 11 now, and there's 4 kids after her, and she's like a little second mum. She's always been so mature and beyond her years. Yeah. So she was a real gift. But it wasn't without difficulty that, the different seasons, as much as it was amazing to feel like Superwoman during my pregnancy, with each pregnancy that did take a bit of a toll on my body. So I would have flare-ups more often either side of pregnancy. That it was actually overall the tiredness and the chronic fatigue that I never labeled as such, because I think you just get so acclimatized to any state that you're in, whether you're unwell or not. I think if someone's, used to having a certain level of mobility or a certain level of pain, or even with your mental health, you can sort of get used to a certain amount of negativity in your mind, and you just sort of sit there and you plateau in a bit of mediocre, and it becomes normalized to you, and then you make excuses or concession or explanations for it that might not be based on truth, but it's just your way of coping, I guess. So as I was, progressing through motherhood over the years, I found my energy levels were depleting, which happens anyway, even if you're not unwell, so I never really put it down to, I've got this kind of chronic fatigue alongside my autoimmune condition, even though I kind of did know that was inevitable, that someone who's unwell is going to have reduced energy. So it just got to the point where it was getting so bad, my energy levels, that I was saying no to my kids a lot in terms of getting out of the house and doing fun things. And it wasn't until my eldest made an observation in comparing us to another family. I knew that naturally as an adult we do compare a lot, and I'd made comparisons like that, but I'd always try and offset it with positive thinking, and I wouldn't let myself sit in the sadness of what we'd missed out on and what I was where I was not showing up or where I was lacking. I don't, especially growing up with a faith background, judgment and is such a heavy thing to carry, and shame and guilt, and that's something that, you know, isn't healthy to carry. So I wouldn't like to put that on myself, and I'd try and pivot to a more positive thought, like, oh, the kids are so creative, you know, they've had to learn how to make fun at home rather than relying on going on adventures or doing sports or going here, there and everywhere. They're just very, very, very creative kids and will have a lot of fun in the home. So I just tried to always see things in the most positive light. And so to hear my eldest daughter, who has carried so much of this sort of wanting voluntarily to be a bit of a second mum, like not me forcing her into that, but in some cases she would, you know, could you hold the baby, you know, mummy's having a flare up today or whatever. So to hear her say that was actually really painful, was really hard. And so, it was something where I sort of had to go, oh, okay, like I can't make me being tired my personality and call myself lazy. I actually have to sort of face the music here that I do have a health condition. And so that's something I might need to explain to her, you know, for her to have a better understanding of, I mean, I knew she knew the reasons, but I think you just sort of have to get real. And it was hard. It was hard to know how to navigate that comment without making too much out of it and blowing it out of proportion and spiraling.
Possibly was just a passing comment.
Totally.
Of a kid, but as mothers, we're so sensitive to our children, aren't we? And it's already hard enough. We feel, you know, there's always something to feel like we're falling a bit short with. As a mum, so it doesn't take much to kind of have us spiraling into feeling like, you know, as you said, guilt at times, guilt and worrying that we're missing the mark in some way. But how did you find your health, and first of all, I guess the diagnosis, and then becoming a mother with that diagnosis, but then also the symptoms? That I'm sure there's been times where it did impact your day-to-day mothering more than you'd like.
Yeah, I definitely, it wasn't until, like, which we'll share in part 2, that where I started to get my health back, that I'd really was able to look back on all the areas that had impacted my motherhood. I just sort of found ways to cope and get along. So I wasn't able to cut corn. I wasn't able to, you know, do the dishes without, you know, a bit of, you know, triggers of flare-ups. And there was just always a base load of inflammation I was dealing with. So lifting things, even lifting the kids, you know, once they got to a certain age, I couldn't be that, you know, run up and jump and hug and like, you know, being rough, and like it was always like, oh, be careful, you're gonna like hurt mummy. So there was always this sort of
kind of reservation a bit.
Lots of I can't do this, lots of I can't narratives that they were hearing, I guess, and they were experiencing. And just the tiredness, really, that was such a big part of it, the fatigue.
Absolutely. How's motherhood changed you?
Motherhood, goodness. Oh, I could write a book about it.
You should, Gaea.
I think anybody probably to some degree in their childhood has experienced some sort of generational inheritance around lack or scarcity, whether it's financial or like emotional, spiritual, you know, and that can turn into trauma sometimes. That can mean that a parent is able to not be diligent in a certain area that they themselves weren't really clued in on from their childhood and their adulthood. You know, nothing in their experience informed them on how to respond to something that might happen. So I had some negative experiences happen to me in my childhood, which then as you grow up and then become a parent yourself, you now have to face. And you find yourself reparenting yourself as you're parenting your children and breaking old cycles. And with each child that I've had, I've found I felt like an onion or an ogre, you know, where it's just like parts of me being peeled off that, yes, I'm doing the work, and yes, I'm putting in the hard work to try and reframe and have different mindsets and different habits, but it's really just, there's something about carrying a child and moving through the co-creation of bringing life into existence. That's just so, it's such a miracle. Like, it's so mind-blowing that we can do that, and that they are theirs to, they're in such a vulnerable state. Like, just all of the chemicals that go through our mind. I think we're in such a pliable state when we're pregnant, and like, I don't know, it's just, to me, it's a very spiritual experience. And I feel like I'm very, very, a lot more able to change dramatic, like a lot of significant change happens internally for me. Whereas postpartum and like, I find that it's a bit more work that I'll have to do to correct sort of things where I want, some growth and personal growth, for instance. But there's just something about being pregnant and that postpartum period where you're just, I don't know if it's your brain is in a certain state, and like the child, and I don't know what's going on, really at a metaphysical, biological level. But yeah, just, I'm so much more softened by pregnancy and that postpartum season, that I'm able to do, like, exponentially grow in the areas that I, really would wish to be better as a mum, or to break old cycles, or to, all of the things that we want to do to be better. So that always blows my mind. Just when you think that, you couldn't love any more deeply, you bring another child into the world, it just opens up, the floodgates even more. Yes. And softens you even more. So yeah, I've absolutely loved motherhood, even though it obviously comes with there's always the other side of it, of like more noise in the house, or more fights that might break out, but it's a million times worth it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And it is like, there genuinely is neuroscience behind our brain changes as we become a mother. And it is a time in our life when our brains are hugely plastic. So it is a time for, growth and shearing away the things that we know we don't need anymore, that we need to make peace with.
Yeah, like a rebirthing, as you're bringing new life.
It's obviously what you said, it happens each and every time. It's not a once off and we're done. Each child has something new to teach us. Yes, I love that. So how would you like your children to look back and remember you?
I would love for them to know that I was honest and real with them, and humble, like in the sense that I'm a big believer in apologizing as an adult to your children where you make mistakes, to be able to show them how to be a model of how they can be an adult as well. So like they're also not going to be perfect when they're adults, but to embody graciousness to yourself and grace to them. I think that, I'd want to just them to remember that I kept it real, and that I was honest and raw and authentic. Even in my lack, like, of course I could say, I want to be, the fun mum, the deeply, like, all the things that I feel like I might be lacking in, but where I lack doesn't define me. And that's not necessarily where people are going to think of, so yeah, what I do know I do well is being honest.
Yeah. And being human.
Yeah.
And I think really it's a special gift. No one would really want to say they want an illness in their life, but the fact that they've also been around and in an environment where there is illness, there is times where there's limitations, has also, I'm sure, helped them to have qualities like empathy and compassion, and to be able to, and I feel that is so needed in this world, is to actually think of others and what they're going through, and life is not linear. So I think in itself it's a great gift to show them, the realness and the rawness. True. And not try to hide how you're feeling all the time.
Yeah. I don't think I've thought of that. That's a really good point.
A lovely gift. What would you like to say to a mother that might be listening to this episode, and maybe she's got a chronic illness or an autoimmune condition, and often it's women feel like things like this are invisible or misunderstood, so she might be going through all the motions alone, and feeling bad maybe about her mothering and where she feels she lacks. What would you like to say to somebody that's in that position?
I would say that grace, being gracious with yourself and empathetic towards yourself, almost like you would parent a child, to really realize that there's like a child in you that needs to be held and loved. Also to allow yourself to be raw and honest with your feelings, even if they're negative. That's something that I learned later on, where I didn't realize I'd suppressed a lot of negative feelings, feeling that as if I were to if I expressed them, that they would swallow me up and I would just sort of spiral and not see the other side of it was always my fear. So then I really suppressed a lot. So I would just encourage you to ride the wave and that you will see the other side. And yeah, feelings just need to be felt, absolutely need to be felt. It's like if you were to tell a kid they could never cry, you know, that's not healthy. Yeah. So it's the same with adults. And yeah, I would also say to really reach out to the people around you and be honest and raw with them and very communicative as much as possible with them about what you're feeling and going through. That, yeah, often the more that is communicated, the more that people better understand and can hold space for you and not. I know for me, I had disappointed a lot of my friends when I wouldn't be able to follow through on commitments to like catch up and things like that. And I didn't do a very good job of communicating the reasons why. It just sort of looked like I was a bit of a flaky friend. So I hadn't done a very good job of realizing, they're not in my body, they're not in my brain. They don't fully understand that the way that my illness impacts my well-being. So not being afraid to educate people along the way that are in your circle of influence, your kids, your family, your friends, and they will appreciate to understand that better.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. I think sometimes we shy away from telling people what's really happening in our bodies. For fear of judgment maybe, or to feel shame,
like we're complaining. We don't want to feel like we're complaining,
or hypochondriac, or I personally felt that way with different things I've felt. So, but really, people can't read our minds, and I'm sure they would be very kind if we just said, actually, this is why.
100%.
Okay.
So true.
Tell me a little bit about your page, Soul Oasis. How did that come about and what's the intention behind that?
Soul Oasis. For me, that is definitely a space that, in the chaos of the online space, something that I've really come to learn in my journey is the importance of listening to your body, and that applies in like every setting, every scenario. And that even means, when you're online and you're scrolling, what's happening in your body. So I wanted to be able to tell my story. I wanted to be able to show up online, but I wanted to be aligned and I guess embodied in that lesson that I learned in life and in the values that I came to, appreciate. So the whole philosophy of Soul Oasis is that internally we have a stillness that we can tap into if we allow ourselves to be still, and that can become a source of energy and clarity and peace, that if we sort of come to that stillness, then we kind of have this like oasis that's inside of us, that we can tap into at any time if we just take the time to be still enough, and to trust that we have such a beautiful gift, I guess, to tap into. That's right there.
Yes.
So and that
free resource, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. But it's just can often be left untapped if we're so in our head and not resting enough into our, I guess, more intuitive, like what comes through when we're in the silence, which is such a rare thing in this, fast-paced, distracted entertainment, can't sit still and can't be with ourselves, can't even be on the in the loo. Sometimes people bring their phones in, and so even though I'm online presenting content, I really want the content that I present to be an invitation for people to kind of maybe operate at a different frequency, that to keep scrolling thereafter would be jarring, and you'd want to go, oh, actually, that was a really nice, calming, bit of information and reflection there, that there's a point there. I might actually just take a break and go sunbake for a bit. And so yeah, it's really a space that's an invitation to encourage someone to consider that there might be a different way they can operate in the world that's a lot slower. And I know that that's not like, I'm not some wise sage that's saying something that's never been said. I know that there's a lot of awareness around nervous system and slowing down, especially as females, where we're sort of, coming off the back of an era where it was like, we've got to do it all and got to be everything. And we're all really burnt out. I guess I'm just a living proof. I think we all are. I think everyone's living proof of that reality, that it goes a long way when you can slow your body down and really tune in. I don't think I would have gotten sick in the first place if I'd been really listening to my body. I definitely pushed through a lot of red flags that my body was trying to communicate to me before I became really sick.
Right. As we become a little older, we can become a little wiser too, don't we? We listen to our body a little more. But I think, I've seen your page, and it's a beautiful page, and I certainly feel quite calm when I'm on your page. So
that's lovely.
Yeah, definitely. And I know everything on there is so authentic, and it's very powerful for another mother to listen to, and we can have all the experts in the world. But if someone resonates with you and, you as a mother of 5, you certainly have a lot of authority in this space, but can still slow down and still show ways in which that is useful for not just yourself, but, flow on your family and everybody around you. So thank you for being here today and really being very open and raw and real about your illness. I look forward to talking to you very soon.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Katura.
Thanks, Gaea.
Okay, talk soon.
I trust that you enjoyed this episode. Postpartum is Forever is a podcast that is focused on honouring the mother. My wish for you is that you feel more aware, less alone, more empowered, and a whole lot kinder to yourself in your mothering. Your support means the world to me, and so I would be grateful if you could follow me on my Instagram page, Postpartum is Forever Podcast, and share this podcast on your socials. Rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening from, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Big love.